Hi parents, this is my talk on resilience in helping your child become more resilient. I'm going to be reading from some notes, so I hope that you understand that there's lots of information to cover, so sometimes my eyes will not always be on the screen. They'll actually be looking at my notes. Thank you for joining me on another one of my talks. Resilience is something that we need to teach our children so that they are more resilient in all situations. Not just in school, but in everything that life brings us. Most of the time we as parents think that our children are resilient until that time when something unusual happens and something different happens, and all of a sudden you realise that your child is not as resilient as you thought they were. So some of the things that children need to be resilient about is when they get injured, when they meet new people, when they are showing themselves in a new situation like a sporting team, or coming to school for the first time in the school year. All of those things bring us to some form of anxiety, and that's perfectly normal, but it's how we manage that anxiety is how it makes a difference. How do we encourage resilience in our children? Well, today I'm going to be using some help from some other people, obviously, because I don't have all the answers. And Dr. Lynn Lyons, who's a psychotherapist, has developed 7 ways to stop the worrying cycle and raise courageous and independent children. So anxious kids are also the ones that we are targeting to help them with their resilience. We find that resilience isn't a birthright, it can be taught. Try to equip your kids with the skills to handle the unexpected, which actually contrasts with our cultural approach. We've become a culture of trying to make sure our kids don't ever have to worry about anything. Unfortunately, life doesn't always work that way, and we have to become resilient so that we can cope with all new things that are presented in our life. Not just now when we're children, but for later on. If you learn how to do some of these things now, as I'm sure you realise as adults, it actually helps you along the way of some of life's little things that it sends us along the way. Anxious people have an especially hard time and helping their kids tolerate uncertainty, simply because they have a hard time tolerating it themselves. The idea of putting your child through some pain that you went through is intolerable. So anxious parents try to protect their kids and shield them from the worst case scenarios. Steps on building resilience. Here's number 1. Don't accommodate every need. Whenever we try to provide certainty and comfort, we are getting in the way of children being able to develop their own problem and solving and mastery. Overprotecting kids only fuels their anxiety. A dramatic but not uncommon example, a child gets out of school at 3:15, or 3 o'clock in our case at our school, but they worry that their parents picking them up will be on time. So the parent arrives an hour earlier and parks by the child's classroom so they can see the parent is there. In another example, the parents let their 7-year-old sleep on a mattress on the floor in their bedroom because they're too uncomfortable to sleep in their own room. Remember, teaching your baby self-settling, same applies here. Avoid eliminating all risks. Naturally, parents want to keep their kids safe, but you have to teach your children to make their own decision making and make their own risk taking. In one family I know, the kids aren't allowed to eat when the parents are not home, because there's a risk of choking. If the kids are old enough to stay home, they're old enough to eat food by themselves. The key is to allow appropriate risks and teach your kids essential skills. Start young. The child who's going to get his driver's license isn't going to have to start when he's 5 years old, but learning how to ride his bike safely on the pathway, not always with you but a little ahead of you, is a risk, but it actually helps them to be brave and to take a few risks. Giving kids age-appropriate freedom helps them learn their limits, also gives responsibility to children as they grow up. Teach them to problem solve. Let's say your child wants to go to a camp, but they're very nervous about being away from home. An anxious parent might say, well, then there's no reason for you to go. But a better approach is to normalise your child's nervousness and help them figure out a way to navigate being homesick. So you might ask your child how they can practice getting used to being away from home. Maybe they should be staying at another friend's house overnight. Maybe they should stay at an auntie's or uncle's another night. Try and get them to a point where they will feel more confident about going on the camp. In other words, engage your child in figuring out how they can handle the challenges, give them the opportunity over and over to figure out what works and what doesn't. Teach your child the concrete skills. Teach the specific skills they'll need to learn in order to handle certain situations. Ask yourself, where are we going with this? What skill do they need to get there? For instance, you might teach a shy child how to greet someone and start a conversation. Public speaking, making new friends, going to a new activity, playing is great. Younger children enjoy stories or acting out how things will work out when they get there. So sometimes you can act out or take pictures or help them with working through drawing the pictures that will help them understand what's going to happen. That can alleviate some anxiety with your child. Avoid why questions. Why questions aren't helpful in promoting problem solving. If your child left their bike in the rain and you ask why, what will they say? I was careless. I'm an 8-year-old. Ask how questions instead. You left your bike in the rain and now your chain is rusted. How will you fix that, for instance? They might go online to see how to fix the chain or contribute money to a new chain. How questions teach your children different skills. How do you get yourself out of bed when it's warm and cosy? How do you handle the noisy boys on the bus that bug you? Don't provide all the answers. Rather than providing your children with every answer, start using the phrase, I don't know, followed by promoting problem solving. Using this phrase helps kids to tolerate uncertainty and think about ways to deal with the potential challenges. Also, starting with small situations when they're young helps prepare kids to handle bigger trials. They won't like it, but they will get used to it. For instance, if your child asks if they're getting an injection at the doctor's, instead of placating them and say, I don't know, you might be due for a shot. Let's figure out how you're going to get through it. Similarly, if your child asks, am I going to get sick today? Instead of saying, no, you won't, respond with, you might, so how might you handle that? If your child worries they'll hate their high school, instead of saying, you'll love it, you might explain that some people don't like their school. Help them figure out what to do if they feel that same way. Problem solve with your child. Once again, act out every situation. Get them to write it down. Draw it. Draw 4 things that they might like about their new school. Some things that they're looking forward to. Help find the positive in every situation. Avoid talking in catastrophic terms. Pay attention to what you say around your children. Anxious parents in particular tend to talk very catastrophically around their children. For instance, instead of saying, it's really important for you to learn how to swim, they say, it's really important because you might drown one day. Instead, you could say, it's really important for you to learn to swim because it'll make you stronger and healthier. And one day, you'll be able to join everyone else when they're having fun. Let your children make mistakes. Failure is not the end of the world. It's the place you get to when you figure out what to do next. Letting children mess up is tough and painful for parents, but it helps children learn how to fix their slip-ups and make better decisions next time. If a child has an assignment or homework and is anxious or overprotective, parents typically want to make sure it is perfect, even if your child has no interest in doing it in the first place. But let your children see the consequences of their actions. So for instance, if they don't do their homework or the assignment, well, it's really not your fault. It's actually the child's fault, and they have to face the consequences when they get to school and see what happens when that assignment is not finished. It won't be so awful that they won't be able to cope with that, but they will know for next time that you have to meet your requirements in life so that you can get things done. Similarly, if your child doesn't want to go to football practice, let him stay home. Next time, they might sit him on the bench so that he doesn't get to have a game like everybody else. So you can help your child sort some of these problems out along the way without making it too difficult. Help your child manage their emotions. Emotional management is a key to resilience. Teach your children that emotions are okay. If you feel angry that you lost the game or someone else finished the ice cream, also teach them that after feeling their feelings, they need to think through what they're going to do next. Kids learn very quickly which powerful emotions get them what they want. Parents have to learn how to ride the emotions too. You might tell your child, I understand that you feel that way. I'd feel the same way if I were in your shoes, but now you have to figure out what the appropriate next step is. If your child throws a tantrum, be clear about that behaviour is inappropriate. And I'm sorry, we're not going to get ice cream because that behaviour is unacceptable. Model resiliency. Of course, children also learn from observing their parents' behaviour. Try to be calm and consistent. You cannot say to a child you want them to control their emotions when you yourself are not controlling yours. Parenting takes a lot of practice and we don't always do a great job. When we do make a mistake, admit it and say, oh, I didn't do really so very well just then. So then you work out ways together that you can handle it if you did it poorly. Let's talk about a different way to handle that in the future. Resilience helps kids navigate the inevitable trials, triumphs, and tribulations of childhood and adolescence. Resilient kids become resilient adults, able to survive and thrive in the face of life's unavoidable stresses. Thank you for joining me today on my talk. Our next talk is Parenting 101. Hope you can join me then. And of course you can always contact me at school on sandra.sloan@det.newsouthwales.edu.au if you have any questions. Thank you.